What happens when an entitled prince walks into America's most sharp-tongued late-night talk show and thinks he can control the narrative? Well, you're about to find out exactly how badly that can go wrong. Before we dive into this absolutely wild story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think about celebrities who can't handle tough questions. Trust me, you're going to want to hear every single word of this train wreck. So picture this. Stephen Colbert is sitting behind his desk at The Late Show, that familiar smirk playing across his face as he introduces his next guest. The audience is buzzing with excitement because Prince Harry has just walked out, waving to the crowd with that practiced royal wave we've all seen 1,000 times. He's wearing his usual, casual, but expensive outfit, looking every bit the part of the reformed royal who's supposedly embraced American life. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry. Colbert announces, his voice carrying that perfect mix of respect and barely contained mischief that makes him so dangerous to unprepared guests. Harry settles into the guest chair, adjusting his posture with the kind of confidence that comes from a lifetime of people telling you how important you are. He flashes that trademark grin and gives a little wave to the audience, clearly expecting this to be another softball interview where he can promote his latest project and play the victim card. Your Royal Highness, or should I say just Harry now? Colbert starts, his eyebrows raised in that classic expression that regular viewers know means trouble is coming. Just Harry is fine, Stephen. I'm trying to live a more normal life these days. Harry replies, his British accent cutting through the studio air with practiced humility that somehow manages to sound condescending. Normal life, Colbert repeats, letting the words hang in the air for a beat. That's interesting, because I have to ask, how normal is it to sign multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix and Spotify while complaining about how hard your privileged life has been? The audience lets out a collective, ooh, and you can see Harry's smile falter for just a split second before he recovers. But there's something different in his eyes now, something harder. Well, Stephen, I think you're misunderstanding the situation. My wife and I have been through tremendous hardship, and we're simply trying to tell our truth and support our family, Harry says, his voice taking on that wounded tone he's perfected over the years. Your truth. Colbert nods slowly, his fingers steepled in front of him. That's a phrase I hear a lot these days. But I'm curious, whose truth are we talking about here? Because I've got to tell you, some of the claims you and Meghan have made, they don't exactly line up with what other people remember happening. Harry shifts in his chair, and you can see his jaw tighten slightly. I'm not sure what you're implying, Stephen, but everything we've said has been completely honest. We've faced racism, we've faced institutional cruelty, and we've faced a media that was determined to destroy us. Okay, let's talk about that, Colbert says, leaning forward with the kind of intensity that makes even seasoned politicians sweat. You've made some pretty serious accusations about your family, about the institution of the monarchy. But here's what I don't understand. If things were so terrible, why did you keep going back? Why did you keep taking the money, the titles, the protection, the palaces? The question hangs in the air like a knife, and Harry's composure starts to crack just a little bit more. That's a very simplistic way of looking at a complex situation, Stephen. You can't just walk away from family, even when they're hurting you. But you did walk away. Colbert counters immediately, his voice sharp. You walked away, moved to California, and then spent the next few years telling everyone who would listen how awful they were to you. That doesn't sound like someone who couldn't leave. That sounds like someone who wanted to have their cake and eat it too. Harry's face flushes slightly, and his voice gets a bit louder. You don't understand what it's like to be trapped in that system, Stephen. You don't understand the pressure, the expectations, the complete lack of freedom. You're right, I don't, Colbert agrees with mock sympathy. I grew up middle class in South Carolina, worked my way through college, and built my career from nothing. So no, I don't understand what it's like to be born into unimaginable wealth and privilege and then complain about how hard that was. The audience is completely silent now, sensing that this conversation is going somewhere unexpected and possibly explosive. Harry's hands are gripping the arms of his chair, and his practiced media smile has completely disappeared. That's incredibly dismissive, Stephen. Just because someone has privilege doesn't mean they can't suffer. Doesn't mean they can't be damaged by toxic family dynamics and institutional abuse. Absolutely true, Colbert nods. But here's the thing. Most people who suffer abuse don't then go on international television and trash their abusers while still expecting to inherit their money and maintain their status. Most people don't bite the hand that feeds them and then complain when it stops feeding them. Harry's eyes flash with something that looks almost like rage. Are you suggesting that we should have just stayed silent? That we should have just accepted the racism and the cruelty and the lies? I'm suggesting, Colbert says, his voice deadly calm, that maybe, just maybe, you might not be the innocent victim you've spent so much time and energy convincing the world you are. That last comment hits Harry like a physical blow, and you can see him struggling to maintain even a shred of his media-trained composure. His face goes through a series of expressions, from shock to anger to something that looks almost like panic. "How dare you?" Harry says, his voice low but trembling with barely contained fury. "How dare you sit there and question my integrity, my honesty about what my family put me through?" Colbert doesn't even blink. "I dare because I'm a journalist, Your Highness, and journalists ask uncomfortable questions. That's literally my job. And right now, your reaction is telling me everything I need to know about how comfortable you are with the truth." "The truth?" Harry's voice cracks as it gets louder. "You want the truth? The truth is that you people, you media vultures, you destroyed my mother, and you spent years trying to destroy my wife. And now you're trying to destroy me because I had the courage to fight back." "Nobody's trying to destroy you, Harry," Colbert says, his tone maddeningly reasonable. "We're just asking you to be consistent. You can't claim you want privacy while doing tell-all interviews. You can't claim you want to be left alone while constantly inserting yourself into every major news cycle. You can't claim you're broke while living in a $16 million mansion." Harry stands up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor with a harsh sound that echoes through the silent studio. "You have no idea what you're talking about. None of you understand the sacrifices we've made, the courage it took to walk away from everything we knew." "Sit down, Harry," Colbert says firmly, but Harry ignores him, starting to pace behind his chair like a caged animal. "We gave up our royal duties, our security, our family relationships, everything, to protect our son and to live with integrity. And all you people can do is mock us and question our motives." "You gave up your royal duties," Colbert repeats, his voice getting sharper. "But you kept your titles. You gave up your security, but you demanded the taxpayers continue paying for it. You gave up your family relationships, but you keep using them for content. Do you see the pattern here?" Harry whips around to face him, his face flushed red with anger. "There's no pattern except the pattern of harassment and lies that you people have subjected us to from day one. Meghan couldn't even leave the house without being stalked and photographed and criticized for everything she wore, everything she ate, everything she said." "Welcome to being married to a prince," Colbert shoots back. "That's literally what signing up for royal life means. Catherine dealt with the same thing, Diana dealt with the same thing, every royal spouse deals with the same thing. The difference is, they didn't expect the entire institution to change just for them." "Don't you dare compare my wife to Catherine," Harry snarls, pointing an accusatory finger at Colbert. "Catherine had the full support of the institution from day one. She was protected, she was guided, she was welcomed. Meghan was thrown to the wolves and then blamed when she got torn apart." "Really?" Colbert leans back in his chair, completely unfazed by Harry's aggressive posture. "Because from what I remember, Catherine was called Waity Katie for years, was mocked for her middle-class background, had her family businesses scrutinized, and dealt with constant speculation about when she'd get engaged. But somehow she managed to handle it without burning down the monarchy." Harry's hands clench into fists at his sides. "You're twisting everything, making it sound like we're the problem when we're the ones who've been victimized. Do you know what it's like to watch your wife have suicidal thoughts because of the pressure and hatred she was facing?" "That's terrible if true," Colbert says, his voice softening slightly. "But Harry, if your wife was having suicidal thoughts, why didn't you get her help? Why didn't you take her away from the situation? Why did you keep dragging her to public events and photo opportunities?" The question stops Harry cold, and for a moment, he just stares at Colbert with his mouth slightly open, as if he's never considered this angle before. We were trying to do our duty," he stammers, but the confidence is gone from his voice. "Your duty," Colbert repeats. "So when it came to doing your duty, Meghan's mental health took a back seat. But when it came to cashing in on that mental health crisis, suddenly it became the most important thing in the world. Interesting priority system you've got there." Harry's face goes white, then red, then white again. "You're a sick man, Stephen. You're twisting a genuine mental health crisis into some kind of conspiracy theory." My wife was suffering, and I was trying to protect her the best way I knew how. By parading her in front of the cameras? Colbert asks, his eyebrows raised. By making her do interviews about how terrible everything was? By turning her pain into a Netflix special? That's protection? We were trying to tell our story before someone else told it for us. Harry shouts, his voice echoing through the studio. We were trying to control the narrative for once instead of being passive victims. There it is, Colbert says, sitting forward with sudden intensity. Control the narrative. That's what this has always been about, hasn't it? Not truth, not justice, not protection. Control. You wanted to control how people saw you, how people talked about you, how people remembered you. And when you couldn't control it, you burned it all down. Harry stares at him for a long moment, his chest rising and falling rapidly, his hands still clenched at his sides. When he speaks, his voice is cold and dangerous. You have no idea what you're talking about, and you have no right to psychoanalyze me on national television. I came here to have a respectful conversation about my work, my family, and my future. Instead, you've turned this into a character assassination. I've asked you questions, Colbert says simply. If you consider that a character assassination, maybe the problem isn't with my questions. That comment about the problem not being with the questions hits Harry like a slap across the face. You can actually see the moment something snaps inside him, his carefully constructed public persona crumbling in real time. You know what your problem is, Stephen? Harry says, his voice dripping with contempt as he leans over the desk, invading Colbert's personal space. You're just another American who thinks he knows everything about the British monarchy, about duty, about service, about sacrifice. You sit here in your comfortable little studio making jokes about things you could never understand. Colbert doesn't flinch, meeting Harry's glare with steady eyes. And you know what your problem is, Harry? You think being born into privilege makes you an expert on suffering. You think having a title means your opinions matter more than everyone else's. You think being a prince means you should never have to answer for your choices. I've answered for my choices, Harry snarls, his face now inches from Colbert's. I've sacrificed everything, given up everything, lost everything, to protect my family and live with integrity. What have you sacrificed? What have you given up? I've given up the illusion that being born special makes you a good person, Colbert replies, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. I've given up the fairy tale that just because someone has a crown, they automatically deserve respect. I've given up believing that wealth and privilege automatically equal wisdom and virtue. Harry straightens up, his whole body trembling with rage. You arrogant piece of trash! You have no idea what real pressure feels like, what real responsibility means. You make jokes for a living while I've spent my entire life serving my country, serving my people. Serving your people? Colbert laughs, but there's no humor in it. Harry, you abandoned your people. You took their money, their respect, their affection, and you threw it all away because you couldn't handle a few mean comments in the press. That's not service, that's selfishness. I couldn't handle a few mean comments? Harry's voice reaches a pitch that's almost hysterical. They were trying to destroy my wife. They were threatening our safety. They were making our lives impossible. We had no choice but to leave. You had every choice, Colbert shoots back, standing up now to match Harry's energy. You could have stayed and fought. You could have used your platform to make real change. You could have honored your grandmother's legacy instead of trashing it for Netflix money. But you chose the easy way out, and now you're angry that people see through your victim act. Harry's face turns a deep shade of red, and when he speaks, his voice is shaking with pure fury. How dare you mention my grandmother? How dare you lecture me about her legacy when you're nothing but a two-bit comedian who makes fun of people better than you for ratings? People better than me? Colbert's voice gets dangerously quiet. Harry, I've built my career through hard work, talent, and dedication. I've earned every opportunity I've gotten. I've never expected anything to be handed to me because of who my father was or what family I was born into. I've never thrown a tantrum when things didn't go my way. You don't know anything about hard work, Harry spits, his composure completely gone now. You don't know anything about real pressure, real expectations, real sacrifice. You're just a pathetic little man who peaked in high school and now gets his kicks tearing down people who are actually important. The studio falls into shocked silence. Even the camera operators look stunned by the venom in Harry's voice. Colbert stares at him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Actually important, Colbert repeats slowly. There it is, the real Harry, Not the reformed prince, not the humanitarian, not the victim. The entitled brat who thinks he's inherently better than everyone else just because he happened to be born into the right family. Harry's hands are shaking now, and his voice cracks as he screams, "I am better than you. I am better than all of you. I'm a prince. I'm a veteran. I'm a father. I'm someone who actually matters in this world, while you're just a glorified court jester making jokes about your betters." "Security," Colbert says calmly into his earpiece, never taking his eyes off Harry. "We need security in the studio now." "You're calling security on me?" Harry laughs, but it's a wild, unhinged sound. "You're calling security on a prince of the United Kingdom? Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? Do you have any idea what kind of connections I have? What kind of power I still wield?" "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," Colbert says, his voice steady and clear. "I'm dealing with someone who can't handle being treated like a normal person. Someone who thinks his birth certificate makes him untouchable. Someone who's so used to people bowing and scraping that he can't function when someone treats him like an equal." 3 security guards enter the studio, their presence immediately changing the atmosphere. Harry looks around wildly, as if suddenly realizing where he is and what he's done. "This is unbelievable," he says, his voice still high and desperate. "This is absolutely unbelievable. You invite me on your show, you attack me, you humiliate me, and now you're having me thrown out like some kind of common criminal." "I'm having you removed," Colbert says, sitting back down at his desk with deliberate calm, "because you've shown our audience exactly who you really are. Someone who can't handle disagreement, can't handle criticism, can't handle being held accountable for his choices." One of the security guards approaches Harry, speaking in low, professional tones. "Sir, we need you to come with us now." Harry looks around the studio one more time, his eyes wild with rage and humiliation. "This isn't over, Stephen. This isn't over by a long shot. You have no idea what you've just done." "Actually," Colbert says, adjusting his tie as Harry is escorted toward the exit, "I think I know exactly what I've done. I've shown America what happens when entitled people get told no for the first time in their lives." As Harry is led away, still muttering threats and complaints, Colbert turns back to the camera with that familiar smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Prince Harry, everybody. A man who learned today that in America, even princes have to earn their respect. The studio erupts in applause as Harry disappears through the exit doors, his voice still echoing faintly as he continues his tirade in the hallway. Colbert straightens his papers, takes a sip of water, and continues with his monologue as if nothing unusual had happened at all. And that's how a prince got himself kicked off one of America's biggest talk shows. Not because he was treated unfairly, but because he couldn't handle being treated like everyone else. So what do you think? Was Stephen Colbert right to call out Harry's entitled behavior? Or did he go too far? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more stories like this one.